All right, we are live. I'm waiting to see if YouTube is going to catch up. There we go. So YouTube is caught up. So yeah, here we go. So welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm going to be doing kind of a review reaction, more of a review to Paulogia's most recent video where he interacts with Habermas. That's kind of what's on the agenda tonight, but we got a few other things to handle, mostly just some business matters, I suppose. But welcome tonight. So I'm going to, I'll preface this video reaction a little bit right now. I like Paulogia when I heard what Habermas's third volume was going to be. Perhaps my expectations exceeded reality because the only thing that mattered to me with Habermas was the third volume. Like, I want to know who he surveyed, who he looked at, all that jazz. And the way every time I heard Habermas talk about it, I'm like, oh, we're going to finally get his research methods and all that crap. Yeah, and apparently I'm going to be very disappointed. So, so there's that aspect of it. I do want to react to this because one of the things Habermas and company do to poor Paul is they constantly point out like he has no academic creds. And I'm like, the guy hangs out with Bart Ehrman. Okay. So, and Bart Ehrman hasn't said his theory is garbage. And I'm going to add to that. Ed here, me, has a degree in biblical studies. I also have a master's degree in theological studies. So maybe it'll come in some use for some other people. And I'm going to say right now that Paul's minimal witness theory is one of the most brilliant naturalistic theories that's come out in a long time. Okay, and I'll put my creds behind it. But before we get into all that, let's see who's here. Let's see, Asher was early, very early. He is very early. EEE was here. Yes, all hail Fangs, everybody. Aso was here. Fred was here. Rimmer as well. Fred, of course, yes. Yeah, I pointed out that it starts at 7, and Aso just noticed that a little while ago. So let's see who else is here. I have not played Planet Crafter, though I have it in my wish list for some reason. There was something really terraforming this planet. All right, okay. Well, there we go. There we go. Now I have a review from somebody I know. That's the thing. My wish list on Steam is, I think, at 97 games on my wish list. And I literally wait for everything to go on sale, and it has to be at least 60% off before I'll consider it. So let's see, Rimmer's here. Yeah, Rimmer. Let's see, Cranky Elder God showed up. So he's here. Martin's here. There we go. And Katie showed up. And Katie, you're not late. No, I just started. I pushed it back to 7 for 2 reasons. One, I knew I was going to be up late this morning, and I was going to go to bed later than normal. I'm like, nope, not going to happen. And I also wanted to go to Saturday Night at the Atheist because we're dealing with Toast Guy again, and he is such a hilarious person to react to that I was just, so I've been over there for a couple hours just kind of listening in while I wake up. So, but here we are. But we're just started, so here we go. Let's see, Michael's here. Let's see, I don't see. I do want to, before we get too far in, Earl, I don't know if Earl's here yet, but she sent me this. And I thought all of you might be interested in the latest Fangs artwork. So, but yeah, she sent me this with a help coming from planet Earth and Fangs holding the world and all the chaos. So there's that. But yes, we did get some new artwork from. I do love this iteration as well of Fangs. This is the cute version of Fangs. It's but yeah, there's the chaos, the lightning, all that stuff. It really does fit him. As soon as I saw it, I fell in love with it. So I had to share it with all of you. But yes, Fangs in all his glory. We'll probably talk more about Fangs later at the end of the stream. I'm doing Paulogia's video because he kind of puts everything together that's been going on for like a couple years. So with the issue that I have with Mr. Habermas. I'm not mad at God. It's hard to really be mad at something you don't believe it exists. Sorry, your assumption is that we're mad at God, and you haven't proven that assumption. So, okay, so, all right, but there we go. There's Fangs. I don't know how I'm going to utilize this one. This one's perfect for a lot of things. We'll see, but yeah, I just fell in love with this one, so I wanted to. Elon is definitely a real life Tony Stark. Okay, there we go. Cosmic Fangs. Yes, that's a good title for this one, Cosmic Fangs. So we'll do that one. You're mad at Draco. I got us. I am mad at Draco Malfoy. There you go. That's a fair analogy. I'm mad at the concept of God that's used by most people. So, all right, let's get Paul up here. I'm going to pause and get the volume back on. And I want to look at this video once again. Much like Paul, I was very intrigued as to what Habermas's third volume was going to be, because he kept advertising it a certain way. And then what happened was it came out, and it's not exactly what everybody was expecting based on Habermas's own words. So, yeah. Yeah, Martin, I think the picture could be help. I need someone. Yes, I do. Yeah, but this is something close to my heart. It's kind of my wheelhouse. I do have degrees in biblical studies and theology. And so when I read these guys, I actually kind of understand the verbiage. I understand what they're doing. So there's that aspect of it. So, but I was very intrigued. And then Paul came up with this video, and I watched it, and I'm like, okay, I need to talk about this, because I don't know if I'll get done tonight, but I'm definitely going to be talking about it. Before I begin, there is a goal in chat. If I reach that goal, I will wear whatever hat has been voted for. The Holy Bunny hat always seems to do well, but it's not unapproachable. So we'll see what happens. All right, we'll see what happens. So there's that. All right. So let's let Paul introduce everything here. If you haven't watched the video already, this will be new to you.
So when a particular critic that most of you know went on his program and said, oh, this is where Gary Habermas is going to tell us about his 250 people he interviewed for The Empty Tomb. That's what we're going to find in this third volume.
What kind of jerk could possibly have said that? The third volume will be his research. So he interviewed 250 scholars. He will finally publish a detailed analysis of that. Oops, that was me.
Okay, I got to stop right there. The reason both Paul and I had that assumption is Habermas basically kind of indicated that was the case. The problem with the third volume of Habermas's Magnum Opus is there's been a lot of vague crap around it. Like, he has been very deliberately like, I'm not going to tell you what's in this third volume kind of thing. And I think it's because he did give some misinformation himself. And so it just happens to be the fact that it's like Habermas kind of indicated that this is what it was. And then now to me, I really felt when I heard what the third volume actually was, and I started hearing other people review it, I like, what a bait and switch. This was an absolute bait and switch. So we're going to have to see what Paul had to deal with here, but I'm going to move along pretty quickly through the video. So
okay, who was that critic that you had in mind there? So
I probably would rather not use the name on the air.
It's okay. You can say my name, Gary.
Say my name.
And just in case anybody wonders, it's not a well-known scholar. It's a popularist, let's say that.
a popularist that also has a well-known scholar, Bart Ehrman, and several other well-known scholars who have listened to his theory and said it's perfectly valid as a naturalistic theory. And I'm an unknown scholar, biblical scholar. You know what? I'll add my name to that list, that I back Paul's theory, that Paul's theory is perfectly valid from a naturalistic point of view. And I would put my biblical studies and theological studies cred behind that. And as somebody who spent a great deal of his ministry and time as a Christian studying the life of Christ and the four Gospels, I would also put that credibility behind it. So the notion that just because Paul's a YouTuber and not an actual biblical scholar, that he doesn't have a valid point is got to be one of the highest forms of gatekeeping I've seen from Habermas in a long while. So honestly, Asherah, I think this is what it is, and he's been attacked by several like doctors, doctor level Christians before. And the reason is his theories as a layperson make them look ridiculous. Okay. And Paul is very popular because he does his homework. I don't care if a person doesn't have degrees. If they do their homework, they do their reading, and then they sit down and they think about it, write it out, and say, this is what it is. I think, Paul has some pretty hefty biblical scholarship in his corner. Okay. So, and I'm just going to add mine to it too, because when I heard his minimal witness theory, I'm like, yeah, that's all you need. This is literally all you need for Christianity to be a thing, is two people to sincerely believe it and have a situation where you can promote it in a superstitious environment where people will believe anything. And in my own experience as a Pentecostal preacher, I put behind that, because miracle stories go through a Pentecostal church faster than gossip, if you understand what I'm saying. Gossip is the only thing we know that it's faster than light. Okay, so it's like it's one of those things where I really get pissed off at Habermas here, because he won't say his name, which is disrespectful. He downplays him as if he's nothing, and yet he doesn't want to deal with the people that are backing Paul, okay, because they are heavyweights. Like Bart Ehrman is a hard heavyweight. He'll mention, there's a couple of scholars that Paul will mention in this video that are heavyweights in this field, and he doesn't want to talk about their support of Paul's theory, because I think that gets him. He's just a populist. Minimal witnesses isn't populist. It's a genuine naturalistic theory for how Christianity rose out of thing. And I think he is jealous. I think it's one of those things. So, so there's that. All right, let's move along.
Just give us his initials. That's all we need, Gary.
You know who he is.
Gary's got us in suspense now for the rest of the show.
yeah, maybe he'll reveal it at the end as a bonus. But all right,
Off the air.
Welcome to Paulogia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. For 5 years or so, I've been interacting with the work of resurrection scholar Gary Habermas.
There's only one person who knows more about the resurrection of Jesus than Gary, and that's Jesus.
As you can tell from
That's a pretty audacious claim. I don't know. There are other resurrection scholars that I would probably put ahead of Gary. I remember reading some, but a lot of them don't go as far as Gary. I think the thing with Gary is Habermas is he came up with minimal facts, and as one critic of the resurrection said, it's the best theory of how to prove the resurrection, except only because it's better than all the rest of the crap that's out there, which isn't a high bar to jump over. So just so everybody knows.
the intro, Gary is also watching my work, even though he doesn't want to admit it. For the past 15 years, Gary has been working on his 4-volume, 4,000-page so-called Magnum Opus book series called On the Resurrection. The first 2 volumes came out last year, and I've spoken about them here on the channel. And while frustratingly the Canadian retailers do not yet have copies to send me, Volume 3 was officially released last week. To mark the occasion, a disciple of Gary's decided to have a bit of a live stream party.
I'm doing a special for Gary Habermas, a celebration show to honor his legacy and the fact that he just finished his 4-volume work on the evidence for the resurrection. In fact, today he's just published his 3rd volume of his 4-volume Magnum Opus on the historical evidence for the resurrection. And that's why we're here today with the other panelists and resurrection experts to speak about that.
All right. Okay. I got to deal with something in chat real quick, folks. No, you're the one hoping that it is real. And I don't know why anybody would hope hell is real. Okay. You have no evidence for any of this, Jesus. So sorry. You're getting close to preaching too. So, just because this stream is a little bit more open than say Deconverters Hangout, doesn't mean that my ban on like just saying shit without evidence, give me your evidence for all that crap and we'll talk. But I spent 40 years as a Christian, 20 years as a pastor with educational creds studying the resurrection of Jesus and all that stuff. There is no evidence for that stuff. So it's your burden of proof. Quit reversing the burden of proof on us. If I'm going to hope in a deity, I'm going to hope in this one because I made it up. Okay. I literally made this one up.
Regular view.
Okay. So, I can create deities in my head too. So I don't hope in anything. I don't really want eternal life anymore. It sounds boring at the end. There comes a point where you've done everything and there's nothing left to do. So human finiteness would eventually get us in the end.
Viewers may recognize Dr. Mike Licona and Dr. Sean McDowell. In the bottom left is Dr. Ben Shaw, who's been Gary's main research assistant for this book project. And in the bottom middle is Dr. Tony Costa from Toronto Apologetics, whom I'm encountering for the first time. Before we get to the multi-hour tribute to Gary, let's take a quick look at what we know about this freshly released Volume 3 and the egregious misrepresentation made by me who shall not be named.
All right. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling that way too, Katie. So, I just put them in time out for a while. Yeah, I just banned them. So don't worry about it, Katie. We're not going to have to deal with that anymore.
They got Gary so flustered.
Obviously, you have 4 volumes that are coming out. This isn't just a one and done book. This is covering all of your research. And just for the audience, do you want to kind of very briefly summarize what each of those volumes are about and what people can expect to find in them?
That the first volume is on evidence. The second volume is called Refutations. With Volume 3, people will find this out soon enough. But Volume 3, I make a break with the apologetics, per se. And I'm basically, there's more in the world than just apologetics. Volume 3 is on scholarly perspectives, and it's a who's who of people with terminal degrees in relevant fields.
Maybe.
Okay. This is the first thing that I noted, that he has made this claim several times about Volume 3, that this is, this thing that has all these scholarly perspectives from relevant fields. Okay, that's fine. I don't know. At this point, I was under the assumption that we were going to get those perspectives, that these things were going to be presented in Habermas's book, that he was going to actually do what he says here, which is step back from apologetics and present other fields and other evidences for the resurrection based on other scholarly research. I really hoped that he was going to, basically give us his evidence, because he makes this claim all the time that 90% of scholars in relevant fields agree that the resurrection was a historical event. He says that often, and it's like, who? Every time he says it, I've always wanted to ask him who. So there's that. Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Yeah. Hey, Fangs, bless you in return. So, does Odin accept keyboard warriors? I don't know. It only seems to be the Abrahamic religions that have keyboard warriors. I don't know of too many Odinists that that have keyboard warriors that go around like Jesus just did. But just so you know, I personally banned Jesus myself. It's very rare for me to do so. But I'm trying to deal with a particular topic here, and you've got somebody that continues to just present assertions without any evidence and continues to make stuff like that without facts. So it's like, would you please give me your facts to prove what your assertions say? So, and then it sounds like they're just trying to be here to bother people. So it's like, nope, I'm done. Hey, you are Victoria. Let's see, Eric's here. Kyle, want to make sure I acknowledge you. You agree with what I did? Okay, thank you. Yeah, he was trying my patience. It's like, dude, quit trying to take over my chat to present your nonsense. So go start your own channel and make an actual video with evidence for what you say and then present that. So, hey, Ronald. All right, let's keep going here, because now he just did all the doctors in the room. Like, he went around that board. There's some pretty good who's in apologetics, some doctors there. The problem is, this is kind of why Habermas is doing things the way he's doing. He thinks that the amount of degrees in the room, plus the amount of stuff that he presents, proves the resurrection. My response to that is, I don't care how many PhDs a person has. If they're wrong, they're still wrong if they can't prove it evidentially. And so, yeah, that's kind of one of my problems with it. Thank you, High Priest. Okay. Yeah, yes. As a High Priest of Fangs, I have acted, yes. All right. So I'm having a problem today because I was over at Saturday Night at the Atheist, and Dave has a new jingle for We Love Toast, and it's stuck in my brain now. So, so I'm having a problem. But yeah, let's continue on here with Paul.
It was by design, or maybe I've just been slow to understand. But from my perspective, Gary has always been somewhat vague on exactly what is going to be in Volume 3. I've never had particular clarity. Here's how Gary described the third volume during his Volume 1 promotion tour.
Okay.
Volume 3 started out as 1,500 pages,
Wow.
and we've honed it down to about 800. And it is a who's who of liberal, all the way to very liberal atheist New Testament scholars, all the way to very conservative New Testament writers with credentials. Very conservative, but PhD. And what we did was try to survey about 140. My research assistant said it's more like 200. He said he's the one that typed it up. About 140 questions minimum from Good Friday to the Ascension. So you got about 40 days here. And think of all the questions you could ask. Why the third day? How did Jesus appear? What's our earliest evidence? Every question you can think of. And all we do in Volume 3 is not argue for anything. We give a landscape view from really liberal to really conservative.
And then describing it this way during his Volume 2 tour.
The third volume is a research volume. We don't engage in the views. I say we. My longtime research assistant, Ben Shaw, I gathered, well, it's Ben's figure, 95% of the data. Ben edited it by retyping. We had to cut down from 1,500 to about 1,000 pages for Volume 3. But it's a who's who on where people are on key resurrection questions. Almost never do we jump in and give a view of our view. If they teach, we have a section, hallucinations. You teach hallucinations, you go down to hallucinations. We don't bicker with you.
And here's Ben.
Okay, so after those two clips of Habermas, what would be your impression of what the third volume is? And Paulogia is very correct in saying it was very vague. I was really, as somebody with biblical studies cred, was somebody that was very, how can I put this? I was put off about the vague nature of it. But he talks about a survey. So it's like, what do you mean by that? He never is very clear about it. And that's how he's going to dodge what me and Paulogia and many other critics thought. Okay, this is him going out to all these scholars, sending, he's got a research assistant who's also a PhD, send out these questions to all these scholars and then have them respond. And he says it's from, the very liberal to the most conservative, but they all have like creds, like all have PhDs and some like that. And so it's like the idea that I got formed in my head based on what Habermas said, and this is him not obviously either not communicating it very well or he was deliberately misleading, was that he had given all this stuff to all these scholars and then they had responded, and this was the results of their responding, because he does continue to pull this 90% of scholars believe that Jesus rose from the dead thing out of his ass. And I still think it's out of his ass after now that I know what this thing is. Like, he is not, like I was always, well, who are the scholars? And what exactly do they say? And what questions did they respond to in your survey? Like, there was a whole bunch of, my master's degree is a research degree. So we studied research method that's legit. And that's where I discovered, like, when I was doing the pastoral epistles, I discovered that there was a big question mark about the pastoral epistles authorship, and it was legit because of following the research method. So when I wrote my thesis, in my assumptions, I said, I'm having to assume that Paul wrote this, even though the scholarship is against it. I had to write that in there. Okay. And I at least could acknowledge that. But Habermas here really seemed to indicate to me that he had done a survey of these scholars, that his research assistant had been doing research and work and all this stuff, and he was gathering information from all these scholars. I got the picture that this was scholarly perspectives that he was going out and digging for. Like, that's kind of what it is. I don't get what was going on here, because he's, earlier in the video, Paul's showing him where some, atheist YouTuber misrepresented what I said. I'm like, after listening to those two clips that Paulogia just gave, what other assumption would you think that we would draw? Okay. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't. It becomes a real problem for me as somebody who's interested in this. And I, like Paulogia, made the same assumption that there's a lot of vaguity to this volume of his Magnum Opus, but there was enough specifics for me to say, okay, well, if this is what this is, then we're going to finally get Habermas's his research method of how he looked at other perspectives. But it turns out that it really, that's not what it was at all. I raptured him. Yeah, permanently too. I'm sorry. I'm getting to the point where my biggest thing now, guys, is if you're going to be in chat, it's fine to get off topic and everything, but at least, don't like type something every 5 seconds, because the way some of the things were misspelled, it's like, have you got this like on a Microsoft Word document and you just like cut and paste and shit? Because he was putting stuff out pretty fast. I mean, I know people can type that fast, so, but maybe, perhaps. Oh, thank you, Ronald. I appreciate you. Let's see who got those. Dave Kaczynski, Kurt Astra got one. That's a good one. Uncle Fox. And rent tax bills are just lines on paper. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. So thank you very much, Ronald. I appreciate you. We're trying to keep our memberships up so the emojis stay. And I know Earl took a break this week from the emojis to go work on something for ASHO, because she works for other people besides me. And so, but she did give me that wonderful picture of Fangs, which I'll share again later. So here we go. But thank you very much. I appreciate the memberships. So there's that. Sometimes autocorrect decides what you mean. I mean, it could be that, I guess, but it was like, dude, do you have all this planned? Because you really are. It really felt like a pre-supper with a plan and things typed out in advance and just, drop the name here. You are correct. Okay. All right, there we go. Oh, blessings of fangs upon you, Michael.
The editor of the book talking about it.
What about the third volume? What's in the third volume? Is going to be, so Habermas has referenced how he tracks a lot of scholars. This is going to be a lot of scholars who he's tracked over the years, and I've worked on a portion of this document for the past decade. He's worked on it since 1975. So I jumped in about a decade ago and added to it. And it is a collection of where scholars are on all these different subjects. So it's not really too much of his thoughts, but it's really highlighting where we put these people in these thoughts.
In hindsight, I now know why they're struggling to communicate what this book is. Because now that I've seen it, I get how bewildering the concept of this book is. Later in the video, I'm going to try to explain it, and I'm sure I will fail, because it's Twin Peaks level out here.
This must be where pies go when they die.
Now, based on those clips, you'll forgive me for hearing them consistently and repeatedly saying, "Sir."
Yes, and that's actually part of Paulogia's video. And Paul, obviously, he just ignores it, but that was actually part of the broadcast. Like, Turek's engineers must have put that over top of it because they were like going to commercial or something. I don't know. But yeah, I think Paul probably tried to get rid of it. But it's like, yeah, okay. But yeah, it is very wild and out of place. But so there's that. But yeah, like now that some people have gotten, I have not read this. Okay. I've been relying on Paul because I trust him. He's always done good research work. I like fact checked Paul for 2 straight years when I first listened to him, and very rarely did he get something wrong. And then within a couple of weeks, he would correct it. So from a research point of view, Paul does good work. Okay. You may not, I've had people come here that were Christians that didn't like the way he does things and things like that. I said, well, what disagreement do you have with his research though? And then silence, it becomes cricket. So there's that. So there's that. I think so. They do. A lot of apologists are trying to look cool and edgy because think about when your doubts are going to most likely crop up about Christianity. It's probably going to be in your teen years or your young adult years. So when you start encountering reality, especially if you're like homeschooled and you get out of that environment, not that I'm banging, I'm not dissing on homeschooling. I think there's certain situations where it either has to happen, or if I was in a deep South state right now that has the pushing the Bible as curriculum in public schools, yeah, I would kind of think about it myself. So, okay. So, yeah, take a bow wow. All right. But yes, given those descriptions, there was a lot of confusion. That still is what this volume was. And Paul is going to try to explain it later. I don't know if we'll get to that part yet, but I wanted everybody to understand that I had the same misapprehension as a biblical scholar, somebody who has some biblical scholarly thread, as he did in talking about this book, because everything I heard Habermas and his assistant talk about when they talked about it felt like me, okay, this is a survey. They keep using the word survey. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't have used that word because that's not exactly what it is. Okay. And I was under the assumption we were finally going to get some answers here. Yeah. Imagine my disappointment, because we're still like when Habermas still says all these scholars support the resurrection. My answer of who are they and what exactly do they support still is a mystery. So yeah, he is a dog amongst dogs. He does his work. Okay. He doesn't produce like when I first listened to Paul, he was producing like videos like mad, like it was like 4 or 5 a week. Now he does maybe 1 or 2 a week, and he probably is still doing pretty well for himself because he's backed off and he tries to research things well, and he's well read. Okay, like somebody should give this guy an honorary degree in all the reading that he's done. So there's that. How corny can you get? Yeah. Oh, but yeah, so Oh, but yeah, I was fooled too. Like I had this idea of what this book was going to be, and apparently it's not anything that anybody of us that were listening to what they were saying about it is expecting. And it's because they used the word survey. Um, oh, we're finally going to get the results of this survey of you surveying all these scholars. And yeah, that just didn't happen. So
Survey of scholars, in that the book is a collection of where scholars are at and who's who of where people are at. And that I took Gary at his word and assumed that he's actually done some kind of scholarly survey for the book, particularly when one of the big deal criterion for considering something a minimal fact is that it has around 90% consensus of scholars. Silly me, I thought you could only claim something had 90% consensus if you do a head count. But apparently vibes is good enough. So
exactly, and Paul's hitting the nail on the head, because the minimal facts theory depends on 90% of scholarship agreeing to the fact. Who is the 90% of the scholars? And you have to do a head count is absolutely essential for this. Habermas is basically admitting he has not done a head count, and it's all about the vibe that he got from the scholarship. Like it's all about his feelings about what it is. And I'm glad Paul brought this point up, because he makes that claim that 90% have to agree to make something a minimal fact. Who are they? Give me a head count. Give me the names, because I literally know of at least 100 scholars, historians, secular historians, who will literally tell you they don't think Jesus even existed. Have you included them in your minimal facts? It's like, who are they is a big question. And I don't think Habermas wanted to reveal who they were, because it would turn out that his research is very biased. And that's why you can get 4,000 pages of nonsense based on biased information. And so I'm sorry, I have to agree with Paul here. It's like, it really feels like it wasn't a head count to get your 90% number. It was a good vibes count to get your 90% number. So there's that. So yes, it's definitely holy fifis at this point. So there's that.
when I spoke with Bart Ehrman shortly after the release of Volume 1, within the context of, at the time, lack of transparency about the book, is why I spoke about my understanding in this way. Which is Gary Habermas's book on the resurrection, Evidences, Volume 1. I don't know if you've heard of this book.
No. Volume 1. How many volumes will there be?
So there will be 4. First volume is the evidence of his minimal facts case. Second volume is responses to naturalistic claims. The third volume will be his research. So he interviewed 250 scholars. He will finally publish a detailed analysis of that. And volume 4 is just his personal musings. So we'll see.
Yeah, this is the thing, because I was under the same assumption that Paul was about the third volume, that this was finally going to be the publishing of his research, the publishing of where he got his 90% number on all his minimal facts. It ain't that at all. Okay. And so I'm very, very disappointed. What it really is, Michael, is like, he can now go hand wave against that, because I've got these other scholars that back me up, but I don't have to then deal with the scholarship at all that doesn't back me up. This is very dishonest research, okay? And my research professor at Asbury would have probably called him out on this, because he's like, no, if you're going to do statistical research, then go find a statistician to confirm your work and what could be wrong with it. Okay, so to me, if you're going to do statistical facts, like 90% of people agree with this minimal fact, damn it, you better have that. Okay, you better have that research. You got to have more than just the claim. Now, the fact that the fourth volume is going to be his personal musings is probably also going to be very telling, and may very well discredit his Magnum Opus, because I think what we're going to see is Habermas's absolute bias in Volume 4. Like, he's not engaged in unbiased research about the resurrection. Like, he is going to reveal his personal emotional connection to the resurrection, and that's what's really the most factual thing. We're going to literally get a low bar Mill moment in that book. I almost guarantee it. There will be a low bar Bill moment. like where he says, I don't care what the evidence is. It's more about, the inner witness of the spirit or whatever that. So yes. There's no, the thing, Martin, is that like when we get to the list, Paul is going to break down the list of scholars that is in the book. And so it's going to be very much, you're going to be kind of floored if you haven't watched this video yet as to what the breakdown is, but there's that.
Let's see how it goes.
Consensus among whom?
Well, this is the trouble, is for decades now he's thrown these numbers out, but he has not allowed anyone to analyze who they are and what they answered. So allegedly in volume 3, what we're going to get is the detailed surveys that he used to get to the data in volume 1 and 2. So it's kind of backwards, but eventually
among 250 people? Okay.
Okay. Now what Bart Ehrman is laughing at there is anybody who's done statistics knows for a fact that number one, okay, Bart knows this. Number one, that's not a very high number for a statistical analysis. And number two, there are way more than 250 scholars on the resurrection. Like there's a ton of them. If I count the Christian ones, there's probably thousands. But if you also go to Europe, around the world, different places, people who study the history of Jesus Christ and his influence on the world are legion. Okay, and 250 is a very small sample size in any way. And so, but Paul, like the same assumption that he had about this book is the same one, that he's finally going to publish his research, his survey, what he asked them, what the results were, and we're going to have actual data that backs up this 90% minimal witness claim that he makes all the time. He makes it all the time. And it's like, where is it? Okay, so there's that. Yeah, it's a very bad sample size. If anybody has taken a basic statistics class, 250 isn't shit. Okay, it's not, it doesn't represent a very large number. And I think the reason that he stuck with a lower number, honestly, Asherah, is because basically he knows that if he goes outside that context of the 250 or whatever, he's going to run into problems. And I think what this shows is Habermas has really selectively researched the resurrection, that he really hasn't branched out and looked at other things. He's actually kind of revealing his hand with this third book, that he never really had this data in the first place. Like he just doesn't have it. And so he's been making this stuff up. I would actually accuse him of lying at this point and misrepresenting what the book was. So, I mean, simply because of this aspect.
He says that they are scholars in inappropriate fields, whatever that means. So we'll all find out. We'll all find out in a year. I think there were enough caveats there. Allegedly in volume 3, and we'll see how this goes, and we'll all find out in a year, to let everyone listening know that I'm not speaking authoritatively or with any kind of concrete knowledge of what Gary's future books might contain. I honestly thought that survey of scholars meant survey of scholars.
Yeah, I'm also there. I really thought that when he said survey of scholars, this was an actual survey of scholars. Like he sent, like it would be appropriate for his PhD assistant to create a survey. They would create a survey of different resurrection questions. Then they would send him to all these scholarships. Would you please answer that and feedback to this form? And then we will compile the data of how you answered. Would be a perfectly valid survey. But that's not it at all. Okay. And as Asherah points out, is it you can cherry pick then who you want to be in this book. Okay. Like he claimed in one of the clips that it was very liberal to all the way ultra conservative. They all have PhDs though. And it's like in relevant fields. And I'm like, oh, who are they? We still don't really, we do kind of do now, but Gary so much misrepresented them too. So it's like, okay. So there's that. Yeah, we're kind of.
Where did I get the number 250 from? I had heard Gary talking about his 140 to 200 questions, so I probably mixed that up thinking that was the ballpark of scholars. I don't know. Bart and I were chatting, and I was going by memory, not notes. I was mistakenly focused on this is a survey of scholars, not this is a list of questions. I did actually correct this conception in a later video once I had more information. I've been waiting with bated breath for what I understood apparently mistakenly, what Volume 3 was going to be. I thought we were finally getting an enumeration of the bean counting that Gary has been peddling for years, promising the receipts later. So with that context of my pre-admitted misunderstanding, let's return to Gary's critique.
Ben said that third volume.
Okay, so once again, I also said, listening to Gary, not listening to Paul, I made the same assumptions. I was like, we're finally going to get the numbers. We're going to finally get who these people are, what their breakdown is, and what the numbers. Where does he get this 90% that says that this is a minimal fact? Okay, that's a very key part of the minimal facts argument, is that he has the data to back up 90% of scholars consider this to be a fact about Jesus. Who are they? Where they came from? All that information is valid, completely valid statistically, and we've gotten none of that over the years. And my assumption, like Paul's, was we're finally going to get that data. We're finally going to get this evasive stuff where he just says 90%, whatever. We're finally going to get that in a book form, and we're going to be able to analyze it and look at it. Imagine our disappointment. So here we go. Here's what Habermas had to say about that.
Volume has just short of 8,000 footnotes.
Wow.
So when a particular critic...
Okay, I don't give a shit that there's 8,000 footnotes. Are the footnotes actually valid to what you're saying is the question. You can have, you can have 8,000 piles of turds in a big pile of turds, and it doesn't change the fact that it's still turds and not gold. Okay, it doesn't, just because you have a large number of statistical doesn't help either, because it that's not what it is. This is true scholarship as well. Yes.
that most of you know, went on his program and said, oh, this is where Gary Habermas is going to tell us about his 250 people he interviewed for The Empty Tomb. That's what we're going to find in this third volume. I'm thinking to myself, right, 8,000 footnotes, 250 people. How does that work out?
Actually, the math, as Paul just points out here, the math isn't that bad. That's only 32 citations per person. It's actually not that bad. So, yeah. Yes. My problem with this is Habermas is going to go, we have all these footnotes, we have all these citations, so therefore we must be true. And that does not follow. Okay, and Paul's going to do a pretty good job here pointing that out.
Well, maybe math isn't your specialty, but if there were 8,000 footnotes from 250 people, we could just divide 8,000 by 250 to see that would be an average of 32 footnotes per person. In a 1,000-page book, that's not a crazy number. That's off by an order of magnitude or something. It just wasn't correct, but it was at least plausible. Now, just like Volume 2, the shipping of physical copies of Volume 3 to Canada is delayed from the rest of the world, so I don't have my copy yet. But this jab from Gary had me so curious that I just had to double purchase an ebook copy to find out how wrong I was. Now, hopefully it's obvious to you that the number of footnotes a book has tells us nothing at all about how many scholars were referenced in the book. Fortunately, the book itself does give us the precise answer because it has a handy author index that someone like me can simply count.
Ah, that's one bet. Two bets. Three fabulous flyers.
How many unique authors does Gary's Volume 3 reference? 558. That's twice as many as the number I pulled.
Okay, so basically Paul was wrong in the wrong direction. There's actually more than there was supposedly. Yeah, they fudged the numbers and claim that yes, the science is lying to you. Asher, the funny thing about these science deniers is they want to use science to help them. And I thought you denied that. So hey, good to see you back, Tripoli. Our dog knows how to do math. Yes. There's been some talk about making Paulogia an honorary saint of Fangs. I don't know. The problem with a lot of sainthoods and holy personhoods is that you have to be dead. And so I don't want Paul to die anytime soon because I enjoy his work. So, but so 558, okay, is the actual number of people he references. So let's find out what the breakdown
but 558 is a lot closer to 250 than it is to 8,000. Gary wanted to make me look silly, so he picked this giant number. Never mind that it was for an unrelated statistic. One could theoretically write a book with 8,000 footnotes and have all of those reference only one scholar. But let's hear more about which scholars made the cut.
I would define relevant fields as...
Yes, this is a very valid point. The thing is, he didn't have to keep this a secret. He could have told people what was in the third book, okay? And then, but he didn't bother to correct Paul before the book was released. He waited until the book was released so he could lampoon Paul. Paul makes a very valid point that Habermas had to do this deliberately. He had many opportunities to correct the misassumptions about this book, and he had like over half a year to do so. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that Habermas could have corrected this, but it's almost like Paul has gotten under his skin, okay? You can tell Habermas is angry about Paul because Paul has gotten under his skin about this 90% statistic. It's like, who are your 90%? Who are they? Okay. Give me their names, and what questions did you ask them, and so on and so forth. How do you know that these are minimal facts? Did you ask questions of each of these scholars about your minimal facts? And the more Paul did that kind of stuff, the more Habermas got angry about it. And instead of like producing the numbers and, well, that's not what this book is really about. This is what the book actually is. Here, let me give you a sample page like most authors would do who are research scholars. Habermas doesn't do that. I'm calling foul on Habermas here because he could have corrected this way ahead of time and he didn't bother to do so. He basically, set Paul up in a sense, and many others by just not commenting. And once again, Habermas is ignoring a lot of scholars who are backing Paul's minimal witness theory as a valid naturalistic theory. Okay, so he keeps attacking Paul as this populist YouTuber and completely ignoring the scholars with PhDs behind him, and I'll throw my master's degree behind him too. It's like you are ignoring the rest of us. You're attacking Paul because you think he's an easy mark. And you tried to make him look silly here, but in reality, what we really see, Habermas, is you being dishonest about what your third book is and being deliberately vague, and you could have come out. So, yeah, I agree with you. Habermas lied, and Paul knows it, and it's absolutely unforgivable to me with Habermas because he's now completely, in my eyes, discredited himself as a scholar. Because if you're going to be scholarly about your research, then damn it, publish your research and tell us what exactly it is. Now, quite frankly, this should have been the first volume where he laid out his methodology, showed us what the survey was, and we would finally get this answer of, did you actually pull this 90% thing out of your ass or what? Okay. So it's like, do you have an answer for that? Yeah, it's shades of scholars. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. But yeah. It's the problem is, Martin, if his research, he lied about his research method and lied about what this book is, that calls into question everything this Magnum Opus is about. I'm going to tell you what my theory is. A lot of these apologists will take this thing and say, look at what Habermas did. And it's the same thing because they got Sean McDowell in there, and his father did the same damn thing. He produced all this evidence that demands a verdict. And it was this big, huge book volume set of stuff. See, that's evidence of Jesus and literally people have dedicated parts of their lives to debunking almost everything in evidence that demands a verdict. And now we're going to spend the next 10 years going through Habermas's crap and saying, yeah, this is crap. But the lay person who believes in Jesus is going to walk into their pastor's office and I'm having doubts about the resurrection. And the pastor's just going to point at this 4-volume set and say, hey, man, Habermas did 4 volumes on proofs of the resurrection. You don't have to worry about that. And the lay person is going to walk out thinking it's been proven because of the big books on the shelf. And never mind that book series, that whole 4-volume set is just 4 piles of crap. Okay. It's bad research. It's incredulity by Habermas. The evidence he gives, I've heard a million times and have been debunked. The naturalistic theory he does, it's his incredulity. I've read enough of him and looked at enough of his stuff that this is kind of where the vibe I'm getting. And his research method is crap. And so, yeah, it's I don't know. Yeah, it really feels like, Michael, this is the case. Is God bound to the research of Habermas's research? It really feels like he thinks that because of what he thinks he's discovered, everybody should just bow down to it and listen to it. And it's like, nope. Who produced it? I don't care that such a thing exists. I always want to know the source, but who produced it? So,
New Testament, theology, apologetics, philosophy, history, archaeology, classics. Not just anybody who sounds off in silly things.
That's me, by the way. I'm one of those anybody's, just sounding off about silly things.
It's a who's who of names across the board, and there are probably more skeptics, atheists, agnostics, Christian writers, let's say Jewish New Testament scholars. There are probably more non-Christians than Christians in the book.
Okay, that's his claim. Okay, Paul has gotten all the names because they are cited. Okay, so he just made a claim that most of these scholars mentioned in this book are actually non-Christian. I want you to remember that. So let's take a look, because Paul's going to break them down and see how well that claim that Habermas just makes lines up.
Probably more non-Christians than Christians in the book. Now, 558 scholars is a lot of scholars, but it's not so many scholars that I can't go find out the self-proclaimed religions of each for those who have been public about such things. As far as I can determine, based on public record, Gary's got 2 agnostics, 4 ancient Greeks, presumably polytheistic, 12 atheists, 1 Buddhist, 4 deists, 14 Jews, and 1 self-proclaimed skeptic. 78 were unknown, undeclared, or just underdetermined. And that leaves 443 of Gary's scholars who self-identify as Christians. Because Gary did...
All right, stop right there. Those facts right there disprove Habermas's claim. And Habermas should stop making that claim because he went out and did research, okay? He literally looked up these people's religions, and that is see, Habermas is living in the past because he's still living with pieces of paper. The fact is, I can look up, if you're a public figure, I can look up what your religion is very, very quickly. Your self-proclaimed religion is usually part of people's wiki or whatever, and wherever they go, if they're a scholar at a Christian university that requires you to be a Christian, okay, that's kind of a dead giveaway that you're probably a Christian. So when Habermas makes this claim that most of them or more of them are skeptics than Christian, he's talking out his ass. He's absolutely lying. Okay, that is a lie. Okay, and he should know better. I mean, this is easily fact-checked, and Paul easily fact-checked it, and he's wrong. So, yeah, it's bad. Okay, it is really bad. Okay, because it's like he blatantly said something and is easily shown to be untrue. Okay, there are 443 proclaimed Christians in this. No matter how much he juggles the unknowns, if all the unknowns became atheists, that would still not change that problem. Okay. He checks off all the boxes. Yeah, that's fair. But yes, Habermas absolutely lied about that. Okay, he had to have known. He was counting on people not checking on him, but Paul's going to check on him. Okay. So it's not majority atheist, other scholars. It's vast majority Christian.
Didn't specify what kind of Christians he meant. I'm not going to split hairs on denominations. There are Anglicans, Baptists, Catholics, Episcopalians, Evangelicals, Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, and even 3 Mennonites. Shout out to Philip Weeb, Gordon Kaufman, and Vernon Neufeld. And there's Gary himself, of course. Even if all 78 of those unidentified were part of the Church of Satan, that still means 79% of the authors referenced in Gary's book are Christians. 92% of the identified authors are Christians. So no, Gary, there aren't more non-Christians than Christians.
Thank you. Thank you. Finally, somebody said it. But that's the breakdown. Like it's like 79% of the people in this book are Christians, when Gary made the claim that they were not. Okay, that the majority of them were not Christians. So, yeah, yeah, he's somewhat obsessive, but yes, but Gary absolutely lied here. Okay, he should have known better before making such a claim. He should have identified what these people's religion was, so he actually knew. But he's made this claim about this third volume many, many times, that there was more non-Christians than Christians, and that's just patently untrue. 79% of them are Christian, which means vast majority of them are a Christian perspective. Okay, so that's not good research, by the way, just so you know. Yeah, Jordan Peterson is doing a lot of horrible interviews. He's losing it, and everybody can tell. Yeah, Trump does not. Yeah, it could be not real Christians. See, but Paul's right. As an atheist, I'm not going to split theological hairs. Okay, if it's Christians, then they're self-proclaimed Christians. So. English texts. Okay, so we're leaving out all the vast scholarship of other people that aren't English. So it's incomplete research just by that alone. Okay, you can't just be, and 735 texts spanning many centuries, that doesn't prove that they're true. Okay. See, because here's the real problem for Habermas, and Paul's going to probably point this out in the rest of the video. It doesn't matter how many, okay, because you still have to demonstrate that a fact is a fact. You can't just have a scholarly opinion prove something is a fact, okay? You have to have data that proves something is a fact, okay? And no matter how much theories you have, how many scholars agree to something, this is, once again, there's a big logical fallacy that's glaring in everybody's face, which is argument popularum. Just because, a whole bunch of people say something is true doesn't make it so. Okay, so truth is determined by evidence. And yeah, the resurrection doesn't have that. And the minimal facts, I challenge every one of them to really be proven as factual most of the time. Anyone who was a Protestant wasn't. So, if we split hairs, okay, Ashra, then maybe he makes a valid point, but then he's going to have to come out and tell us which Christians he doesn't think are really Christians. Do you think he's going to do that and keep the sales of his book high? So, I haven't done a video recently, so. That's still, my problem with the whole relevant degree argument is, who are you talking to still? Because no matter what relevant degree you have, you still have to give evidence of your findings. And the problem I have now with Habermas is, if this is indeed his third book, then he still hasn't given his evidence of 90% of people agree to this fact. He still hasn't done that. And so his minimal facts is still up in the air because he hasn't established them. So he does distinguish evangelicals. Okay, so everybody not an evangelical, it's still, well, let's piss off a bunch of people then. Okay, yeah, so yeah, it's argument from popularity at the end of the day. Okay, like it's so what? You still haven't established the evidence or factuality of this. And this is what Gary and company are trying to do. They're trying to impress you with numbers of how many people do this and how many, but even, if I take, Yeah, well, it's obvious bias, so his is bad. Okay, it's really bad. So it's like even if I, as he says, were to grant the other 78 are from the Church of Satan, you still got 79% of these people being Christian biased. So it's like, sorry, you're going to get the results you're going to get. And he's certainly not telling the truth about it. So he didn't know the numbers, or he was deliberately ignorant of the numbers, or he didn't bother to get that. Okay, there we go. Where? What evidence? Facts? I'm sorry, this is all he's ever hinged on is consensus. He say that these are facts. Okay, what's the evidence that they're facts? He's never presented that. He's always said 90% of the scholars agree that this is a fact. That's all he's ever said. Okay, I'm still, and Paul still, all of us are still waiting for this. So thank you, Martin. Appreciate you. Yeah, it's like great shades of biased samples. Like sorry, there is no evidence behind some of these facts. Okay, I question the evidence behind these facts. And so far, all their PhDs don't amount to a hill of beans as far as evidence. So they're not facts. He thinks they're facts, but they're not. I absolutely disagree with all of them pretty much. The thing is, it's not really facts, because he goes into near-death experiences, which is a very opinion-based field. And it's, I've got people in my chat that will tell you how NDEs don't prove shit. Okay. And I will say that too. Everything he gives as evidence is, I looked at the list of what he'd done. It's been done before. There was nothing really new in there. We've seen all that before. Okay. And a lot of that evidence is questioned. Sorry. That's not actual evidence. So, but volume 1 is not full of facts. It's full of presentations and claims about things, and many of which do not have facts and evidence behind them. The problem with many people is they don't know the difference between a hypothesis and evidence that backs the hypothesis. Okay, when you say Jesus rose from the dead, that's a claim. What evidence do you have for that claim? Okay, that's the whole key of resurrection things, and there isn't a lot of evidence there. So, but he is absolutely appealing to those as if they're facts because of the consensus. He backs almost everything because of the consensus. Okay, like he thinks that there's a consensus on this, and the scholar consensus, but when you get to what he thinks the consensus is, it's not legit. So he's bad with his consensus argument in the first place, because as we just discovered, most of his consensus is Christian. And secondly, most of what he presents has been presented before as evidence for the resurrection and debunked. Okay. His whole issue is he's trying to disprove naturalistic theories. The problem is none of that does that. Okay. I'm sorry. I've dismissed Habermas many, many times. I think I read his smaller book on his minimal facts a long time ago. And I'm like, these are not, just because a whole bunch of scholars say something doesn't make it a fact just because you assert it. Okay. Facts have data behind them. Facts have information that isn't questioned. Facts have stuff that you can take to court. And none of what Habermas says in his first volume could you take to court. I don't think any of it could be. Yeah, it's been debunked. Okay, it's old. Okay, in fact, that's part of the problem with his research methods. It's old. So, yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, it's old stuff. Thank you, Ari. Appreciate you. Appreciate the donation too. Thank you. But yes, my problem at this point is, his whole case has always been built on the consensus. It's always been consensus first. He establishes what he thinks is the facts based on the consensus. The consensus is the horse that drives his cart. The problem is, now we know that the consensus is from Christian scholars mostly, which means he has what Christians think are facts. He doesn't have evidential evidence that they're facts. If you want to prove a minimal facts of the resurrection, then establish it a fact with data and evidence. Forget, go to those scholars and say, what is your evidence that the resurrection is real? Give us that. Don't just take an opinion poll. Okay, you got to do more than an opinion poll. So, yeah, it's his opinion, pretty much. Yes, I really, honestly, as a former minister, I can say that what the value of this tool is going to be. If I spend, I don't know how much, hundreds of dollars it's going to be to buy all 4 volumes, right? And I put it on my shelf as a pastor and I have somebody having questions about their faith, I can point to that book and say, Habermas is a great biblical scholar, which he's not, and say, this is his proofs for the resurrection. He wrote 4 volumes on it. Now, never mind, the volume 3 is just him collecting little bits and snippets from various Christians and people he wants to collect, a very biased sample, okay? And never mind that number 4 volume is going to be his personal musings. And never mind that volume 2 is basically his incredulity about how he can't understand how any naturalistic explanation holds up or others couldn't be made. And never mind that his first volume is all old stuff that's been debunked over and over and may not even be factual accurate anymore. Never mind that. And part of it is near-death experiences, which is woo. Okay. It's like all a pastor needs is that tool to point that doubting believer away. I'm looking at it from a propaganda point of view with my poli-sci degree and going, this is a great propaganda tool to keep people in the faith because they're going to look at the size of it. They're not going to want to read it and find out if it's accurate. They're not going to determine whether or not, like 4th volume is his personal musings. So what? Okay. That's a great deal of incredulity right there, thinking your personal musings matter more than anybody else's. Your research methods are shit in volume 3. You're not giving us this 90% figure. And going backwards, your answers to naturalistic theories are basically your incredulity. You can't understand how people would think that way. And I've already, he says this over and over in that book. And then you got number 1, where his evidences that he's given, people have examined before and don't find it convincing. Okay, so what you have is 4,000 pages of conjecture and speculation and opinion packaged as scholarly work. And a pastor's going to say, well, Gary Habermas did this work on the resurrection. This is 4,000 pages of his proofs for the resurrection, when really it's maybe 1,000 pages as attempted proofs of the resurrection, and the rest of it is bullshit and his incredulity. That's the reality of it. So, so there's that. I get what you're saying, Real, but it's like, I have looked at the resurrection all my life, okay, because I was a student of the life of Jesus. I do a series right now called Questionable Witnesses, which I'm about to kick off again next week, pushing myself to get that done, where I'm going to talk about the Gospel of Mark and its relationship to other things. And I've studied this all my life, and I'm going to tell you that the evidence is bad. Like Paul's claim that the evidence for Christianity is hearsay plus collusion, probably the most best way to describe it. Okay. And I'm glad for him to do that. So I'm reviewing Paul's little feud with Habermas, mostly, Reg. So you can reach, yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. NDEs have to be true, yes. In order for part of his proofs of the resurrection to be true in volume 1, NDEs also have to be true. Okay, which is not an established fact. So he's openly said that volume 4 is his personal musings. He's literally said that, Habermas himself. He's literally said that volume 4 is going to be his personal musings on the resurrection. That's not me talking. That's Habermas. Okay. OBS is around here. Hey, Missing Mod. Good to see you. Oh. Yeah. Musings with somebody trying to talk about theological implications. Yeah, he might be doing that. The problem is, as a former theologian or current atheist theologian, depending on how you view me, I know what theology is. It's making up shit to fit empty spaces. I illustrate this with fangs all the time. Somebody asked me a question about typology this week, and I didn't answer because it's like, just watch me talk about fangs. I'm literally using typology to prove every theology about fangs. I don't even need, I'm just using the natural revelations that people have done over the years with bunnies and rabbits and proving fangs. And that's all typology. So I allow Christians as long as they behave themselves and don't preach at me. I've already been down that road. So there are plenty of criterias of authenticity that we use to determine stuff in court cases. First of all, everything in the Gospels produces hearsay because it's all second, third hand. We know that. I knew that as a biblical scholar, as a Christian, that basically the Gospels were hearsay. Okay, they wouldn't be allowed as testimony in a court of law because they are hearsay. All right, so the reason we don't allow hearsay is because of collusion elements, which we have obvious collusion, for instance, between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. There's definitely collusion where two of them use Mark. So it's like all of that doesn't bode well for the case. Sorry, it just doesn't. But as far as factual things, do you have actual data, okay, that proves what you're saying and not just opinion? Because without data, without numbers, you've got nothing really, okay? And that's where people get like a lot of scientific fields wrong. Like it's just an opinion with evolution. No, evolution has data. Okay, they have numbers that they put there. They have factual evidence. They have artifacts. You don't have that for Christianity. Okay, Christianity is a lot of claims, and no evidence. That's why I abandoned it. That's why I left it. Sorry, that's just true. Okay, but my standard of evidence has always been published. Can you have something that will go to a court of law? Does it stand up to historical scrutiny and probability? Sorry, the Gospels don't. Okay, most historians reject the Gospels as history. So because of the criteria, there's strict criteria, which it seems an omnipotent, omniscient God would be able to meet. So, but he doesn't. So. Yeah, I'm going to go back to it. I've been debating with myself about the next episode because I'm finally hitting the book of Mark, which is the last gospel, Triple E, and I'm like, do I just do a thing about Mark, not really deal with the story of the life of Christ, and talk about the relationship between the gospels that we know for sure as an episode by itself? And I think that's probably what I'm going to do. So. Yeah, I mean, I've come out with several videos about what I would consider evidence, but most of it is stuff you could take to a court of law and prove somebody guilty. And if you can't do that, the lack of evidence means they're innocent. So the lack of evidence is so there's that. Yeah, it's weird. There's a glitch in the supernatural system. Yeah, that's valid. Hey, Earl. You're just in art mode? Okay. I will let you be in art mode because when you're in art mode, Earl, you do good work. So. So you agree with my banning of Jesus? Okay. So I banned Jesus earlier. So I did it myself too, Earl. You guys should be proud of me. So, you should be proud of me. All right, let's get back to the video here. I don't know how much longer I'm going to go here. This might end up being multiple parts, but so there's that.
I don't want to dog any of you evangelicals, but the point of my book was not to tell people about evangelicals. It was to tell people about non-evangelicals and how much agreement there is on these issues. I would say that.
Yes, except that the agreement you're looking for is on the resurrection, and other Christian groups besides evangelicals agree with the resurrection, Habermas. So you're not really getting a different opinion on such a central issue to Christianity. It's like, dude, are you that unself-aware? Okay, are you that unself-aware? Yeah, I showed everybody, Earl. They loved it. I'm going to show it again, too, by the way. But yeah,
of number 3.
That's what I wanted the theme of my 10th birthday party to be.
If that's the theme, it's completely lost on me. I thought the theme was, why does this book exist? And who is it for? And why did I spend $100 to avoid?
all valid questions, Paul, all valid questions, which is why I've not spent a dime on this. If somebody wants to give me Habermas's crap for free, I'll take it. But so far, I'm not impressed. The way he talks about it, he's just, I don't know, I find him a little bit, I'm just, yeah, I know you're just goofing around and it's a hit. You know, this is what you got to do more, Earl, just goof around. Oh, we love you, Earl.
Avoid further poisoning the well with my own befuddlement, I'm going to turn this over to the pastor from Rabyd, who seems genuinely excited about owning Volume 3.
This is the review where I have read a smaller percentage of the book that I am reviewing than any review I have done before on the channel. I always like to point out how I'm reading these books that I'm reviewing in their entirety. Well, I read all of On the Resurrection, Volume 1. I read all of On the Resurrection, Volume 2. But I've only read about 50 pages of On the Resurrection, Volume 3, Scholarly Perspectives. And I'm not even going to apologize to Gary Habermas on this one for only reading this amount of the book, because unlike Volumes 1 and 2, this book is not meant to be read all the way through. And I hope that my review will let you know if you should purchase this book that you also will not read all the way through. What I didn't really realize, though, was that this book is basically a well-formatted, hence props to the editor on the cover, and well-edited collection of Gary Habermas's life work of collecting the views of other scholars on the resurrection over decades of work. It is mostly a collection of, here are the scholars who believed that the disciples simply didn't know where the body of Jesus was located, and that was how the tales of the resurrection started. Casey notes this, Coakley writes that, Crossan makes this claim, Galvin mentions these views. So I can't imagine anyone, due to the nature of this book, anyone other than Benjamin Shaw reading it all the way through. Unless...
Oh, really? You know, here's the thing, Fangs. I expected this to happen, that somebody was going to do this. And I know that this is a very recent channel, too, because you're using literally the... So, yes, Fangs equals Seeky Earl. I kind of figured, because it's like you have the artwork that the only two people that have it is me and you, as far as I know. But you kind of give yourself away with this one, with the little thing at the end. You do that a lot, Earl. But yes, I approve, by the way. It's approved. But yes, but I want to get back to this pastor's analysis. He's basically saying, okay, all this book is Habermas's collected research notes. Like, that's it. Like, that's all it really is. Where this guy said this, so I'm going to pull this out, put it here, write it down. This is why you don't trust Rabyd atheists. You shouldn't trust Fangs. He will eat your carrots, buddy. Oh, so there's that. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, we now have Triple E glorifying in the fact that he summoned Fangs with an earlier one. So that's all it takes is a bunch of carrot emojis and a $2 donation, folks, and you can summon Fangs. I can't guarantee that, though. Like all times when a god intervenes, it's sometimes a mystery when they do or they don't. Oh boy, phrasing fangs, phrasing. Oh, there's far too many dirty-minded people here, fangs, for that one. Oh, but yeah, this pastor seems to be this pastor seems to be befuddled. He only read 50 pages of it because the rest of it is just Habermas a collection of Habermas's notes over the years of what this was. That's really weird, seeing he mentioned the word survey every single time that he talked about it, and there doesn't seem to be one. It's simply Habermas's personal survey over the years of where he's collected stuff. That's why when the guy says he's worked on this since 1975, this is his collected notes over the years of what people have said about the resurrection from various sources. And unfortunately for him, the vast majority is Christian. Huh, weird. Oops, you're a goodish little. Sure. I'm not going to read that one, but some of you can watch it later. Oh, I knew this was going to happen. I predicted that somebody would do fangs at some point, and I also kind of predicted it would be somebody close to me. I had my own internal odds of whether it was going to be Earl or Asho, one or the other. So, but as soon as I saw the picture, I'm like, there's only two people I know that actually have that picture. So there's that. Oh.
Unless you're like Xerxes and you need something to read to help you to fall asleep before you go to bed. But at the same time, if you are doing research and study on the resurrection and you want to know the various views on this subject, so instead of you needing to search through who knows how many books to find the various views on the Roman guards posted at the tomb, the issues with the number of women at the garden, and go from book to book hoping to find who wrote on what, Habermas spent decades compiling all this information together, and it is now in one epic collection. So if anyone is doing serious research on the death and resurrection of Jesus, I couldn't imagine a resource that would be more helpful and more time-saving than this one.
You can't even imagine a more helpful and time-saving resource than this? Well, Rev Reads, I got some good news. The world no longer operates with card catalogs. We've got computers now. Let's go with Rev Reed's suggestion and look in Gary's book at which scholars write against the historicity of the guards at Jesus' tomb. Gary alerts us to Brown, William Lane Craig, Davis, Osborne, and Staudinger, along with various scholars. Now I could go find these footnotes and learn the titles of the books and page numbers. Let's compare that to the Logos Bible software, something anyone doing serious research on the resurrection probably already has access to. I ask it for scholars who think tomb guards are ahistorical, and voila! First, I get a synopsis telling me about William Lane Craig and some others up front. I'm seeing Staudinger there too, in the many dozens of results coming back. I'm also seeing Gary. His books are actually part of the dataset. On the plan I have, Logos is pulling from around 90,000 sources, not just the ones Gary read. Importantly, it found 2 passages from F. David Farnell from 2016 and one from Edward D. Andrews from 2017. Those are significant because these were explicitly excluded from Gary's book. As he writes in his introduction,
it's also important to note for readers with chiefly research interests that most of the sources referenced in this volume date before.
Okay, I want to stop there, because what Paul just demonstrated is that there's a better source to do this that isn't guided by Habermas's bias. Logos is a much better software program to do that kind of research. This research has always existed before Habermas published his volume. Habermas is not doing anything new. He's just centered on his own research with this volume 3 then. And I don't want a third volume with Habermas's bias when I can go to Logos and get everything that they've connected. So there's that. So let's see. I don't know. maybe Earl is channeling Fangs. She did just notice that without membership on the Fangs account, she can't post her own emojis. Fangs can't post his own emojis that it has. So she's going to have to figure out what to do about that. But thank you, guys. I think we reached the goal. So let's see. Wow. Overwhelmingly, the Holy Bunny hat wins again. I don't know. I may have to pull it off to get some other result. And then also Triple E, thank you very much. Appreciate you. But yes. So for the rest of the stream, I have to be very careful in speaking about Fangs. So yes, Earl is the speaker for Fangs. I mean, I'll allow it as the high priest of Fangs. I will allow it, and you can't speak anything cool about Fangs without the hat. So there's that. So yes, yep. Here we go. But yes, but Paul's bringing up a very, very good point in the fact that we have had Logos software for years where I could have pulled up anything about the resurrection long before Habermas wrote. So even the pastor's review, he's being nice. But the fact is, if I was doing that review as a pastor and as a Christian, I would have said the same. I would have said, but we already have better research tools in Logos software. So all you're really getting is Habermas's research, not the consensus of overall scholarship and the way that's done. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things where I would have definitely, mentioned it. So, but yes, the Holy Bunny hat wins again, 51%. There were others that made it, Newsboy hat 25, Fedora, Patriotic Sun hat. So I don't know, maybe I should show that one. So next time I put it on there, like it's this one. I like this one. I'm going to embarrass my kids on vacation with this one. So maybe next time when you see it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, that's the breakdown. But I don't know. The problem now for Habermas then is he's created something that has essentially been a waste of time. And now we're going to get into how old some of it is. Okay, I want to talk about that because I think it's important. All right.
2 passages from F. David Farnell from 2016 and one from Edward D. Andrews from 2017. Those are significant because these were explicitly excluded from Gary's book. As he writes in his introduction,
it's also important to note for readers with chiefly research interests that most of the sources referenced in this volume date before 2015, with more recent publications, even those written by already cited authors, being absent.
You heard that right. Volume 3 came out this month, and it's already 10 years out of date. I can ask the same question of the Perplexity search engine, and it has a similar consensus summary that Logos gave us, and identified William Lane Craig here, too. It came up with Richard Carrier, Michael White, Helmut Koester, and John Wenham that Gary's book doesn't include. And since the LLMs have ingested humanities libraries, we checked ChatGPT, which found Brown from Gary's list, but is also adding Crossan, Ludeman, Allison, Ehrman, and Goulder. Some of these are the prominent and obvious non-Christian scholars he's bragging about including. Gary's 3rd volume may have some novel information, but no one should be relying on it as their only source. Spend your book money on a Logos subscription.
So it's not.
Thank you. I would agree with that assessment too, because what Habermas is trying to pass off as unique is not really all that unique. Probably most of his notes over the years are going to be the same as what Logos would give you. So you'd be better off with a Logos subscription if you really want to deep dive articles about various things about the resurrection. So there's that. But yeah, it's always duck season. Okay, yeah, it's never rabbit season. It's always duck season. Like a pepper. I should reread. Probably not. I don't know if you want to read the 3rd book. I think the pastor's probably right. It's going to be a good cure for insomnia.
Not really apologetics. It's where an atheist New Testament scholar is on this. It's where a committed evangelical with the degree, a terminal degree in a acceptable area, where they are.
It is not apologetics. Gary's first volume claimed that he had 90% support for his minimal facts, and I assumed this volume was finally going to be Gary showing the math to back up his claims. Now it looks like his declarations of consensus will never be demonstrated.
Mostly Good Friday to the...
And that is the real shame of it, because what Habermas is deliberately avoiding is demonstrating his 90% claim. He has never done that. He's always said that these were 90%, backed up facts. These are my minimal facts that prove the resurrection. But that all hinges on this 90% consensus of the scholars that this is a fact. And he has yet to demonstrate that in anything he's done. Okay, I'm sorry, I think he's pulling that number out of his ass. Okay. And it's purely his fifis about it based on his research. And he needs to broaden his mind a little bit, get over to Europe a little bit, maybe. There's other scholars in other countries that have done work on the resurrection. Maybe you need to go assert them. Maybe you need to go deal with them. How about that? There's other people, Christians around the globe now that have resurrection research. Maybe you want to look at that. But he's very much, stuck in English-speaking world with his research, and that's a big problem. So it's always skeptic and apologist season here. Yes. I don't know. Fangs is only interested really in, Duck, you don't have to worry about Fangs, actually. It's the fact that everybody's trying to go after the ducks here. We put a protective wall around rabbits here at the Rabyd Atheist with Fangs as the Rabyd Atheist. So that way we're both covered. No false advertisement here. You'll get the Rabbit or Rabyd Atheist, depending on who you're looking for. Unlike Gary Habermas, who claims there's a survey in his third book and there isn't one. So, so there's that. We're way ahead.
The Ascension, how many questions can we ask, and where are these guys all the way across the board? And I purposely included non-Christians so that people wouldn't think this is a book from one of our evangelical schools.
And yet it has 440 some Christians in it. Just because they're not evangelical, it doesn't mean that they don't believe in the resurrection, Gary. Okay. You're kind of showing your evangelical bias there, that somehow these other people don't agree with that. So there we go. Oh, it's all right. It's okay, man. You're safe here. We'll put the protection of Fangs upon you. So Fangs will watch over you, Duck. Okay. What's this? Oh, Bren, you're late, baby. But yeah, my problem is with Habermas here is it's like, dude, your ego is showing. Just because a Catholic is a Catholic scholar and not evangelical doesn't mean he doesn't believe in the resurrection. It's kind of key to his beliefs. Okay, the resurrection is a cross-Christianity belief. Evangelicalism be damned. Okay, if you put a Christian scholar talking about the resurrection, they will be very liberal on every issue about Jesus's life, but the one thing they will not challenge is the resurrection, because it's absolutely essential to Christian belief. And Habermas seems to be totally like, if I don't use evangelicals, then I'm going to get an unbiased thing. And it's like, no, dude, if you use 440 out of your 500 and some as Christians, you're going to get a Christian bias. Okay. So there you go. Oh. Yes, even Roman Catholics make the resurrection literal. To them, it is a literal event. And Habermas seems to be under the delusion that if you have liberal in front of your word as Christian scholar, that somehow you don't believe in the resurrection. And that's just a load of crap. Okay, it's garbage, and it's like, so you included all these other Christians because they weren't evangelical, so they're not real Christians, and they don't really believe in the resurrection like I do, but they do. Okay. People die. People do not return from death easily. No, they don't. That's kind of my facts against it. But yeah, Habermas is completely blind here. Like, it's like, dude,
and what we all think.
I'm going to try to keep an open mind and try to actually use it as a resource for my own resurrection book. But count me initially skeptical. This is an expensive book, so be forewarned that it's an index, not an argument or narrative that would be of interest to a regular person.
Okay, that's a big key. If you're going to buy this book, understand that it's a reference book. It is not anything else. It's not designed to be. It's a reference of Habermas's research as compiled by his PhD assistant. That is what it is, based on every account I've heard now. It is not the survey of scholars that present, okay, this is my minimal fact. This is the 90% of scholars that say that this is a minimal fact. It's not that at all. Okay. And you could look up a lot of people on Logos instead of doing this. Your buddy would be better spent. Yes, Captive Des. Hey, Dave, how you doing? I now have I Love Toast as a jingle in my head. Thank you for that, Dave. Oh, that's one of the arguments that I've used for years. It's like you got a whole zombie horde that rises when he's crucified. He raises 3 other people from the dead. So why isn't their resurrection special and make them the sons and daughters of God? Oh, wait a minute. Probably the zombie horde is all male. So it's saints, and there's no female saints in Judaism. So as far as I know. Yes, they did die again. Yeah, if based on Habermas's own words, Reg, it's at least 10 years old. Like he doesn't do anything past 2015 as far as scholarship. And based on what we already know about the bias, it's like 80%, close to 80% bias towards Christianity. So this isn't good research on Habermas's part. This is, I mean, if you want to do a statistical research analysis on this book, you could do and show how Habermas's statistical research is bullshit. Okay, you could probably demonstrate that pretty well from this book. So, yes, the zombie horde. It's my favorite part of the Bible. I do it every Halloween. Yes, we do have a Discord. But yeah, Bran runs my Discord. I very rarely show up there. I don't think I've ever showed up there once yet. So, but it's a place that you guys can go and discuss these issues if you want, away from the channel. So, all right. Well, thanks. Thank you very much, Reg. I appreciate you becoming a member. That's awesome. I don't have Dave's You Rock though to play for you, but it was for Fangs too. We have already done the Catholics, and so we had the wheat crucifixion, the wheatifixion. So we have talked about the wheatifixion. You should only eat your toast if Fangs has put his fangs into it and purified it first and made sure the wheat is pure. So yeah, I mean, go to the Discord, join it. Brent is always happy to talk with people there. A lot of other people have come there to talk, but it's a great place to talk about stuff that I talk about. I just don't have time most weeks to even really do a Discord myself. So I handed it off to Brent, and Brent does a very good job of it. So as far as I know, so I think the link is in the description. It should still be there. I haven't removed it, so. Yes, it's going to be holy toast, Dave. You got make sure your toast has 2 fang marks in it. That's all I'm saying. Yes, crossover lore. Yes, we have crossover lore. Yes, because we already have like Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe fangs. We know who your mom was, or one of your parents was. But we know who your mom was. We have no idea who your dad is yet. In fact, I'm thinking of leaving that to conjecture, because I think we could get a lot of interesting theories based on that. Because, like, does your other parent have to be a male, or could it be a female? That would be interesting. biologically speaking. There's all kinds of things the gods can do. Don't mind me. So there's that aspect of it. Oh. The subway eating goblin lives in a forest closet. Did you drop in? Oh, because I have my own habit of certain people and uncertain. Yeah, I mean, I'm on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, and I'm going to probably start dropping videos next week again because I wanted to wait till the start of June because I now have 2 months of data of just live streaming, so I can compare that to when I live stream and put videos out. But I've also been taking a break producing videos to kind of get my head around what I'm trying to do. So there's that aspect of it, but that should be coming up next week. I'm going to go back to my archives to my first year of stuff and try to redo some of that stuff so it's better. So that's going to be fun. Yes, Earl's our resident goblin. We have a resident goblin too. Tuesday is the day of the dinosaur for me. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I'm going to have to, because when I started this channel, I go back to those old videos. Like I did the 10 Commandments like in my first 6 months, and I think it should be redone because I want to deep dive one, the misconception of the 10 Commandments as a whole that people have, Christians have. And then I also want to show how it doesn't relate to secular morality anymore. And I want to show the changes to the 10 Commandments as God redid them. Because the moral commandments disappear in the second reiteration. So, oh my goodness. Hey, Reg, thank you so much. So we have B-Dog, Danny from the blockchain. Ronald, you have a new membership. That's a good hit. Thor is there. Scarlet, Trades, Logan Fisher, Apostate Sisters, another good hit. Al Trucker, another good hit. Love these people. Storm Chaser, good one. Christian Athanas, Absurdus, yes, there you go. Yes, there's a bunch of lurkers there that listen to me. That's the thing about doing this. It's like it's kind of a podcast. People just like to listen in, and I'm good with that. Someday, maybe the Rabyd Atheist will have 1,000 listeners at some point. They'll all be here for Fangs lore. So they won't be here for me. They want to know what the latest thing for Fangs is. Yes, your tithe is humbly accepted according to Fangs. Oh, and on that note, I have to reiterate, the tithe thing is a joking thing. We don't demand that out of you. In fact, we appreciate true free will offerings out of your abundance, and don't be spending electric light money to support me, please. As a former minister, I have kind of this thing about, pay your bills first and take care of yourself first before you take care of me. Okay, do it out of your abundance. So I want to make that disclaimer. So I can time out Reg. Yes, Fangs will still be here. Yes, Fangs will always still be here. You got to understand, I remember when the Pastafarians came out and the Flying Spaghetti Monster came out and everybody, oh, that's a fad. It's still around. Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe by Skeptic is still around and used by other channels. I strongly suspect that Fangs will be the same. So. Yes, thanks for I keep playing reruns for friends. I can't do this anymore. Oh, there you go. Oh, thanks for the memories. Yes. But thank you all so much. You guys are great. But I think I'm going to stop it right here. We may pick this up in a couple weeks again but I think I got the important points out tonight that Habermas has basically misrepresented what this third book was about. A whole bunch of people had that misrepresentation. They talked about it and he did not bother to correct it until after he released the book, which is suspicious as shit. So all right, there we go. The true prophet and the actual deity have a disagreement. So there's that. We finally have that moment, and that's true of every religion. So I no, according to Cranky Elder God, something happened between the other deity involving coitus and Lisa the Rainbow's giraffe's neck. That's the only information I've gotten out of Cranky about that. And so something else happened with another deity that created fangs. I do still work with the theory that Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe had black spots, and all the black spots turned into fangs. So that's my one. So there's that. But yeah. Oh, Hot Lips has left the building. I think so at this point. I really have a problem with this book because I think it was falsely represented by Gary and company and the apologist community, and it's crap now to me. It's like I already looked at the list of his proofs of the resurrection and go, this has all been done before, and several of them are laughable, like NDEs. It's laughable that that's proof of the resurrection. Habermas is unhappy. Yes. Habermas lied. Paul approved it, and Habermas is unhappy. But there's some other things that are said later that I think we'll go over later. But I'm going to get up to 2 hours, and I'm kind of like that. So there's that. Parents are absolutely whores, which we appreciate. How else are we going to create a holy abomination? Yes, I have my own holy abomination. Yes, what happens at the drunken bar. It did happen at a drunken barn dance. That's the other thing I got out of Cranky. That whatever happened between Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe and the other god happened at a drunken barn dance. And the gods keep that stuff secret, just like if you went to Las Vegas, Nevada. So like that. You're going to have a dumpster fire. Okay. When is this, Asa? When is your stream? Maybe I'll come by. See, you need to understand that according to lore, as I understand Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe, she ate a very specific group of gods, the creator gods, and then pooped out the universe. Other gods who are not creators, like elder gods, didn't touch them. Okay, there's other gods that Lisa wouldn't have eaten because they weren't creator gods. They don't give a damn. Okay, and the elder gods. So there's that. Oh, 5:15. All right. Well, I'm going to get off then, so I can I can go there and bother you. Yeah, he didn't get eaten. That's why he's grumpy. There's that. Oh. Oh. You were asking her to eat me too? Oh, wow. And she still said no? Wow. That's that's saying something, Cranky. I don't know. You may have a personal issue to deal with. So there's that. I don't know if Fangs might not have a problem. Oh. All right. I mean, see, now with Fangs actually having their own channel, they can appear anywhere. Well, we'll never know where Fangs is going to show up. So, send her a divine revelation. This is going to be great. I'm absolutely having fun with this. All right. Well, I'm going to call it quits for tonight. Let's pull Paul off of here. But I wanted to pull up. This one. This is where you're seeing the Fangs logo from. Here, let's. So. So there you go. But I like this one. This was great art. Earl sent this to me, and I don't think she intended it to be immediately published, but I loved it so much. So there it is. But you have the world saying help, and Fangs has come and to help the world. Probably just not in a way that the world thinks it needs to be helped. Oh, I need someone, not just anyone. Yeah, but this is great stuff. I have to give Earl credit for this one. This is my favorite, avatar of Fangs, because Fangs has many avatars, being a multiplication god, and can appear as any gender, sex, sexual orientation. So, you can refer to them as your own, if that makes you feel closer to the nom-noms of Fangs and makes him, her, whatever, nibble on your heart even more, you do that. So Fangs is completely flexible when it comes to his pronouns. I use his because it makes him feel closer to me, the he. So, but do whatever you want. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I've said it before, I have 3 goals. My first goal with this channel is indeed to make money. I'm very upfront about that. I'm trying to take the knowledge I have from all the years as a pastor, theologian, biblical studies, all that stuff, and put it to good use too, again, even though I'm an atheist. And so, I did invest a lot of time in this, and I'm trying to recoup some of those losses, I guess, so to speak. But I also am here to entertain, and I think, heading the route we have with Fangs and company is very entertaining. It's given us a lot of laughs together as a community, and so yes. So there's that. And then, I'm here to make you think, and I think we do all the 3 of those things in pretty good balance. So, well, yeah, and maybe predictive, because if you've watched the news of recently, so I need a hero. Huh? I need a hero. Not to a hero. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that too. It's a meatball on fire. Oh, nibble, nibble, nibble. Oh, yes. But I'm going to call it a night, mostly because I want to go over and bother Asho on his stream and give him a hard time. I'm up all night tonight, and I don't have to go to work, so time to do some mischief, I guess. Be a true avatar of Fangs myself. So I want to thank everybody for stopping by. We'll probably pick up this video maybe in a couple weeks, see what else is out there. But I wanted to get to Habermas because he disappoints me, and really nobody should be taking him that seriously anymore. So thanks everybody for stopping by. Appreciate all of you. May Fangs always nibble on your heart. May your teeth always be pointy. May your carrots always remain pure, and as they always are. Nom nom and all that stuff from the high priest of Fangs, me, the Rabyd Atheist, speaking of the Rabyd Atheist. So thanks very much. Very interested in deity, doesn't even believe in themselves. So thanks everybody. Appreciate all of you. Once again, live your best life. You only get one go around, and then it's over, truly over. So make sure you're taking out your time, money, and energy, and all the things that you do, and spend them on yourself, people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'd be happier if you do. And, don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith, because as a dead end, because as we all know, there's only one true God, Fangs, and his followers are the only true followers of any God. And that God doesn't even believe in themselves. So make sure you don't that. I speak from experience. And as always, guys, thanks for stopping by. I will catch you all next time, which will be Tuesday on Rapid Fire. So we'll see you then.